Madam Chair?
Mr. McGovern?
Yeah, well, I have one more amendment. I was going to have two more amendments. In the spirit of bipartisanship, I was going to have an amendment to strike the provision of the rule that lays H-Res 598 on the table. That was Mr. Norman's resolution, that non-binding resolution that he proposed, but I think I'll just let that be. But I have one final amendment to the rule. I move the committee strike Section 9 of the rule and replace it with a section directing the architect of the Capitol to install a plaque honoring the law enforcement officers who responded to the violence that occurred here in this Capitol on January 6, 2021, as already required by law. Madam Chair, the January 6th Select Committee did an incredibly thorough job investigating the events of January 6th, and I have their report right here. And if my colleagues haven't read it, I would urge you to read it. I think trying to rewrite history with a new select subcommittee is a slap in the face to the law enforcement officers who bravely came to our aid that day. And instead of creating a new select committee, you should be hanging the plaque to honor those law enforcement officers, a plaque that is required by law. Every day that goes by without hanging the plaque, I believe, is an insult to those heroes. But if you insist on creating this select subcommittee, I'd suggest they investigate the mass pardoning of violent insurrectionists, some of whom have committed other crimes. And here are just a couple of examples. One man convicted of assault and pardoned by President Trump was recently sentenced to life in prison for plotting to murder nearly 40 law enforcement officers who investigated him and to bomb the FBI. He has shown no remorse, and his lawyers tried to argue that the pardon should have also covered this conspiracy. Another rioter was arrested for a home invasion committed less than 4 months after his pardon. I'm sure those terrified homeowners wish he had been in prison serving his 8-year sentence for assaulting police officers on January 6th. All told, at least 10 pardoned insurrectionists have already been rearrested, charged, or sentenced for other crimes. So maybe the Select Committee can look into why violent offenders were mass pardoned without any due consideration. But I fear this is just another shiny object to distract from the fact that this majority is blocking the bipartisan effort to release the Epstein files. And I urge a yes vote on my motion to honor law enforcement and hang the plaque, and I yield back.
Anyone wish to speak on the amendment?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Griffith?
I would urge a no vote on the amendment. The amendment, as I understand it, and maybe I don't have it here, maybe I do, but as I understand it, it strikes Section 9 and inserts the other language. And my objection to the amendment is that it strikes the other language. Most people don't know that this work has been worked on as a part of the House Admin Committee. And I serve on the House Admin Committee and served in the capacity as a member of that subcommittee while it existed. It seemed to be more appropriate to move it to Judiciary. Barry Loudermilk headed it up in Admin. He's going to head it up in this as well. It's his resolution. And what we found was that there were a number of items in the original Select Committee that were not turned over or were not included in the report that Mr. McGovern referenced. And so this is just to clean up all of those details to make sure that the American public has all of the facts, that everything is released. I mean, it was really interesting, and I'd have to estimate this evening, Madam Chair, but approximately 25 to 30% of the information that the original Select Committee gathered was not only wasn't turned over to the House, it's missing, and there have been attempts to find it. Some of it was found at the White House. Some of it was turned over to archives. It's actually the property of the United States House, and we're just trying to make sure that we have full disclosure that we're releasing all of the January 6th files, and we're just trying to get to the truth. And one of the things I found most interesting in the situation as this committee was moving forward, it's got a different name now, but the committee is basically the same concept, is we found that the Secretary of the Army got the instructions on January 6th to send in from, as you know, there was a controversy over, whether or not the Capitol Police Board authorized National Guard to come in. Trump had offered it in advance. It was turned down. It was offered again. There were requests by Chief Sund, I need help, bring him in. And there were about 2 hours from the time that President Trump gave the instruction, yeah, send him in. He got the request finally, following protocol. He immediately sent the order. Secretary of the Army McCarthy got the order from Trump, and then for some reason, which we don't know, we can speculate, but I'm trying not to speculate, McCarthy didn't get that order to General William Walker for about 2 hours. About 2 hours, the National Guard was sitting there. Of course, they got vilified in this whole thing unfairly. And we had a hearing where we brought in the 4 officers who sat with Walker the whole time. His line of communications was open. He never received a call. And that's not in the January 6th Select Committee's report. The testimony of McCarthy's in there that he called him, and then they were slow to act. 4 different officers said we were sitting with him. He did not get that call for over 2 hours, and that there was a discrepancy in the evidence. We're just trying to get to the facts on things like that. And in fact, one of those witnesses, Madam Chair, and I still to this day find it very unsettling, was promised anonymity by the J6 Select Committee, the previous J6 Select Committee, was promised anonymity if he came in and testified. He came back to testify to us again because within about 48, I might be wrong, it might be 72, I didn't bring all my notes with me today, but within 48 to 72 hours after having given testimony in what was supposed to be a closed box, protected atmosphere, his identity was revealed to the press, and the press started calling him. He was the lowest ranking member who was there, and he had just come on board and really didn't want to get into the crossfire between different parts of the United States military. Madam Chair, one of the officers, and I believe he was a colonel, if memory serves me right, a Harvard grad, he was a lawyer, he outright said that some of the witnesses who'd come to the J6 committee previously and who were included in the report, but his testimony wasn't, had lied to the J6 committee. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to wrap up. We're just trying to get to the truth. And if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, just let me finish, I'm on a rant. If my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want full disclosure, they should be voting for this HJ Res 605 because that's what we're after. We're not trying to do anything except get all the facts, lay them out on the table, bring them to the entire United States House, put all the facts on the table, and let history be able to judge. We don't want to hide anything. We don't want anything missing. We don't want to have computer files that have disappeared. We want to put it all on the table, and we're going to use everything we can. And the House Admin Committee didn't have the tools necessary that the Judiciary Committee has available to it in the way of subpoenas and et cetera, and thus you have the language before us today. So I feel very strongly that we need to keep the HJ Res 605 language and move forward, Madam Chair. And with that, I will yield back. I'm sure the gentleman.
Yeah, I do, Madam Chair.
comments.
Yeah, I have strong feelings on this, too. I was in the chair that day, and I'll never forget what happened on that day. But you know what? If that's your only objection, I withdraw my amendment, and I have a different amendment to the rule. I move the committee add a section directing the architect of the Capitol to install a plaque honoring the law enforcement officers who responded to the violence that occurred here on January 6, 2021, as already required by law.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment by Mr.
Yes.
McGovern?
Yes, I mean, I obviously support the amendment, support the installation of the plaque, which the speaker has now blocked for well over several years. But I'm also astonished that this rule would seek to just put into place this January 6th commission with no testimony, with no notice to the public, with no floor debate, that it's just going to happen as a result of a rule. I mean, talk about hiding something from the public, especially after there's already been a January 6th commission that has produced thousands of pages of documents and videos and everything else. And this resolution doesn't even say what the unresolved questions are. And given this administration's attempt and the House Majority Leader's attempt to rewrite the history of January 6th, I think it's a gross dereliction of duty and a gross abuse of power to try to slide this thing through. So I would strongly object to its inclusion in the rule, and I support Mr. McGovern's amendment, and I
Right.
yield back to him.
And just to be clear, I mean, we're keeping this committee in place, which I think is a mistake, but we're just merely adding a section that would require the speaker to hang the plaque honoring the officers who protected us that day, as required by law. So that's what this is. Pretty straightforward. I yield back.
Madam Chair, I am a little bit confused on 2 points. If I might, one, could we see the exact language of the new amendment? And two, if it's already the law,
It's
how
already
does a resolution change anything?
That was going to be my comment, but thank you very much.
And the reason why is the speaker is not complying with the law. I mean, we passed a law in this body requiring that a plaque be produced, which it has been. It is here somewhere in this building, in some closet, and it is displayed. And so, again, we have been trying to get it displayed. So if you don't want the plaque, if you don't believe we should have done that, if you don't believe we should honor the officers who protected us, if you don't believe the speaker should comply with what we all voted to do, then you can vote no. But I've simplified it. This is just about the plaque honoring the officers who defended us on that day. I yield back. Reggie, yes, vote.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment, Mr.?
I don't know if I'm in order to speak again.
I will yield time to you.
All right, I would just say that it's already the law, Madam Chair, and I want to see the plaque go up. I don't disagree with that, but it's already the law, and putting it into a resolution really doesn't do anything. I mean, it's already the law. I don't know why it hasn't been put up. I do know that some of my colleagues, hang on, I do know that some of my colleagues have put up plaques of their own or facsimiles thereof. I kind of like them. I kind of like having them multiple around the Capitol, but that's outside of my jurisdiction is to determine where, when, and how it's put up. I think it's outside of our jurisdiction on this committee, but it's already the law, and I believe it'll get done at some point in time. I will tell you, I was on the floor that day when the Capitol Police came to me and said, you need to leave. And I followed those. I was sitting on the floor, obviously watching rules issues and parliamentary procedure, and I left because they asked me to, and I appreciate them taking those actions. But so I'm very appreciative of the Capitol Police and what they did.
There would be.
But I don't know why we would add that to this rule when it's already the law.
This is awful.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
Mr. Neguse.
well, I thank the chairwoman. It's ridiculous to argue that you don't know why the plaque is up. That's legitimately, it's intellectually honest argument. Your position is you have no idea why this law that was passed by the Congress, signed into law by the president, to put up a plaque here in the Capitol to honor the police officers who protected you and protected me on the House floor, and Mr. McGovern, I remember you being there. I remember Mr. McGovern being there. I was there. We all know why that plaque is not up, why it's sitting in a basement here or in a closet. And it may be convenient to argue now that somehow it's not germane to this particular provision of the bill, which creates a new select committee to investigate unanswered, quote-unquote, questions regarding January 6th, and somehow it's not pertinent there to say that maybe the Speaker of the House should follow the law and put up the plaque that is sitting in the basement to honor the Capitol Police officers that defended you and me. I hope they're listening tonight. Really, it's just farcical. Very easy for my colleagues to simply say, you know what? Mr. McGovern met us halfway. He doesn't agree that this committee is a good idea. I'm with him. I have no idea why you've decided in September to now create this select subcommittee on January 6th. You waited 9 months. You seem to be very intimately familiar with the justifications for this subcommittee. I don't understand why you waited nearly 7 months, 8 months, 9 months to decide to now create this subcommittee that is so urgently required. But in any event, Mr. McGovern met you halfway and said, I'll change the amendment. You can keep your subcommittee. just add a couple of words to say that the plaque should go up. I don't know how you look the Capitol police officers in the eyes of these people defended you. They defended me. They defend us every day. And there's a plaque honoring them for their sacrifices on January 6th. And it's sitting in the basement. The Speaker could put it up today. He chooses not to. You could ask him to do so. You choose not to. This committee could compel him to do so by adopting Mr. McGovern's simple amendment. And I presume it will choose not to. So I think it's shameful. I don't understand why my colleagues have refused to take this up for the last 9 months. I know why. I think we all know why. We know that the reasons why the Speaker refuses to put this up. But it's shameful nonetheless.
Well, Mr. Neguse, I just suggest you ask the Speaker why he does not do that. But I really am losing my patience over being told why we do things.
Tell us why.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this amendment?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to speak on the amendment.
Ms. Ledger Fernandez?
I'll yield that to my colleague.
Yeah, I'm happy, Madam Chair, not to impugn your motives. Tell me why. Why has this not been put up?
I didn't. I said you may ask the Speaker why
Okay,
it
so
hasn't been put up.
I appreciate that, Madam
That's what
Chair.
I suggest.
I will ask the Speaker tomorrow if I can find him, and I will come back to this committee on Monday and reintroduce this amendment because I am sure that he will not oblige, because I am not the first person to ask him why this plaque has not gone up. We all know it is obvious the president does not want this plaque to go up. This is fantasy land. What are we talking about? We all get it. We all know it. So dispense with that, please. I mean, I understand if you don't want it to go up, the president doesn't want it to go up on the Capitol complex, stand by that. But making this argument that somehow we just don't know, and we shouldn't impugn motives because, who knows why they wouldn't want to put up the plaque honoring the police officers who defended us on January 6th. So anyway, I yield back to the chairwoman.
Thank you.
The gentlewoman from New Mexico.
And I think that to say that this committee doesn't have jurisdiction, you just discussed earlier how amazing it was that this committee was going to direct another committee to do something. This committee could do this. It is a vote and a choice that each of us will make on this amendment for whatever reasons you choose. I will tell you the reasons I will vote for it. I will vote for it because every time I walk by my office and I see the cardboard plaque that I have chosen to put up, I am reminded of the fact that the Speaker has refused to put up the real one. And every time I walk into my office and I pass that plaque, I feel bad for the police officers and the Capitol Police who defended us that day and who should feel insulted that this body won't demand that they get the respect that they deserve after suffering so much that day and that night and that morning and for weeks and months and years afterwards from that trauma. And it was a small gesture, that plaque. And we are not putting it up. And this is a vote we will each make. And as to the committee, the reason why I also am opposed to the committee is that this president likes to rewrite history. He is telling the Smithsonian that we should not focus on how bad slavery was. So the idea of rewriting history is of concern. But once again, this is a vote solely on putting up the plaque and honoring and respecting the Capitol Police who suffered so much that night for us.
Will the gentleman yield, or gentlelady yield for a question? If we were to adopt this amendment, I guess this would be a question for all of the Democrats. If we adopt this amendment, would you vote for this rule? Yes or no?
Can you jump
If
in?
we adopt the
That's
amendment.
a ridiculous question.
It's not a
It
ridiculous
is a
question.
ridiculous
That's not a ridiculous question.
So
I think
in
that's a
other-
fair
In other
question.
words, you can't get an amendment made in order unless you vote for the rule?
I'm just
That's-
asking, if we
no,
make your
this
amendment
is-
in
this is-
order,
this is chock-
would you vote for the rule? That's the
This is
question.
chock
Just,
full of
it's just
closed
yes or
rules
no.
and lousy
Just yes or
policy.
no, Mr. McGovern.
I will not.
Okay,
So-
the question
And
was
if that's your
asked.
excuse not
Just
to...
answer it,
if
yes
that-
or
if-
no.
If that's your excuse not to vote to honor the Capitol Police, that is pathetic.
No, I think what it shows is that you're continuing to play political games.
No,
Okay,
so I think that,
Political to honor the Capitol Police? Give me a break. That's just wrong.
I think I agree with the chairwoman that you can feel free to ask the speaker about the plaque.
It was a bipartisan law, by the way,
And if
too.
you're not inclined to vote for this rule without your amendment, I don't see anything other than playing a political game yet again with these types of items. I yield back.
Well, you're voting for the rule, so you can vote for the amendment. You can be consistent, okay?
Ms. Ledger Fernandez, are you finished?
yes, I am.
Thank
And
you.
I urge a yes vote on McGovern's amendment in order to honor the police.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, the question's on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have
I
it.
ask for a roll call vote, Madam Chair.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no. Mr. Norman? No. Mr. Norman, no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy, no. Mrs. Houchin? Mrs. Houchin, no. Mr. Langworthy? Mr. Langworthy, no. Mr. Scott? Mr. Scott, no. Mr. Griffith? Mr. Griffith, no. Mr. Jack?
No.
Mr. Jack, no. Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Ms. Scanlon? Ms. Scanlon, aye. Mr. Neguse? Mr. Neguse, aye. Ms. Ledger Fernandez? Ms. Ledger Fernandez, aye. Madam Chair?
No.
Madam Chair, no.
Clerk will report the total.
4 yeas, 9 nays.
Noes have it, the amendment's not agreed to. Any further amendment?
Yes,
Ms. Scanlon?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment to the rule. I am not as full of the milk of Christian kindness, I guess, as Mr. McGovern, but regardless of whether or not the amendment with respect to putting up the long overdue plaque is adopted, I find it really offensive that Section 9 would adopt without hearing or debate or a separate vote a resolution to establish a select committee to investigate unidentified remaining questions surrounding January 6, 2021. So I offer an amendment to the rule that would strike Section 9 to put this godforsaken commission out of existence. It is a political farce. It does not advance any knowledge or information that we need in this body. And if you are so certain that there are issues which need to be investigated, then you can put together a resolution that identifies them so that the whole world knows what you're trying to do as opposed to what it appears this would do, which is provide yet another opportunity for the president to rewrite history. So I offer that amendment.
Is there any further discussion on the
Madam
amendment?
Chair,
Mr. Griffith?
you know, it's absolutely outrageous that when the select committee that did not have proper representation from the then minority, our side of the aisle, and then the data is missing, it's gone. Unidentified issues, you say, identify the issues. How can we identify the issues when the people leading it on your side of the aisle destroyed some of the information? That's what happened. Some of it wasn't put in the report, and some of it is missing. That's documented now. How much is missing? It's a large segment of what they did. It's just gone. We're just trying to replicate some of that so the American people can see it all. Some of it may come out and look bad for our side of the aisle. That's fine. But we're here tonight and everybody says they want to release files and see this or that. And now y'all don't want to see this or that. You don't want to see all of the files. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, Madam Chairman, it is absolutely unfathomable that we wouldn't want to have that information where it's supposed to be, and it belongs to the people, it belongs to the House, it's supposed to be out there, it's supposed to be public, and it's not out there. And the reason I cannot sit here tonight and give you the information you want is that you all spoiled the information, you spoiled the evidence. You come to this argument with unclean hands. I'm sorry, you come to this argument with unclean hands. Now, it's not the four of you individually. I do not mean this personally. I mean that the Democrat Select January 6th Committee did things that it ought to have done. And it destroyed or tried to destroy large segments of the evidence that came before them. That's inappropriate. And this select committee will help to resolve those issues. I just want to get the information on the table. I want to get it all on the table. Put it all out there. As a person who loves history and has a history degree, how can the future judge what happened without all the information being open to the sunshine of information being laid on the table for everybody to see? Good, bad, ugly, etc. It all needs to be out there, and that's why I support H.J. Res. 605. And I would submit to you that the point that was raised earlier by my colleague goes back to Jefferson when she said, if this passes, will you vote for it? As you all know, in the original formation of this House, we did not have standing committees. And Jefferson has some beautiful language, and I'm going to try to paraphrase it. But he said in the Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure that you shouldn't put somebody into the amendment process. Now, back then, they didn't have standing committees. So they would say, all right, the 5 of y'all go over there, or the 15 of you go over in this corner, and y'all sort out this language. Or like they did with the Declaration of Independence, they sent a committee off to draft the language elsewhere. But Jefferson's wording on this in the Manual of Parliamentary Practice and Procedure, I encourage you to go read it, says, like a child, one who cares not for a bill should not be placed in charge of it. Like a child should not be placed in the care of someone who cares for it not, neither should a bill or a resolution be placed into the care of one who cares for it not. So if you are not, I mean, it used to be the rule, they don't follow it anymore, and it's been, the precedent has changed, that if you were not willing to support a measure, you were not to offer amendments to that measure. That was what Jefferson stood for in that comment, that one who cares for it not should not be in charge of it. And I know you don't care for this, but to say that there are unknown issues and that therefore we shouldn't have this investigation, I would submit to you, if the full report was there and if all of the data had been provided to the House, we wouldn't need this. But that's not what happened. And so the Democrat Party comes to this discussion on H.J. Res. 605 with what we call in legal terms unclean hands, and the arguments are falling on, at least on me, as being illegitimate arguments by a party, not the four of you, I respect all of you, but by a party that did not put all the information out, and I don't understand why. What did they have to hide? What did somebody know that they didn't want to come forward? I don't know the answers to those questions, but I want to know, because inquiring minds want to know. I yield back, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair?
Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, I was a history major too. And let me just, for the record, say that it used to be that every bill had a separate rule. Now we have rules with 1,000 bills all attached to them. So with all due respect, this is a very different time. Secondly, some of us are a little sensitive about January 6th because I was in the chair that day. I saw what happened. I was one of the last people off the House floor. I was there when they were breaking the glass to get at the police. Police were tasered. They were beaten. And so, yeah, I get a little concerned when we have a president that pardons everybody who did that. No exceptions. When we have some members in this House right now who continue to rewrite history or talk about that day as if it were a peaceful day of people just concerned about the country. I mean, it was a violent, awful day. But let me also just say, there's like a little bit of disconnect here. The gentleman's passion and his outrage and his anger, Boy, I wish there was a little bit of that that would go toward the people who attacked our police officers. And, you know, again, you know, trying to just say thank you to those who saved our lives that day has become an impossibility up here. And it is really, really frustrating. I support the gentlelady's amendment, and I hope that, yeah, and I yield to the gentlelady.
I just want to be clear. I mean, if we had any idea what this commission that's just being thrust upon the country was going to do, it might be a different matter. You say there are unanswered questions, or at least that's what this resolution says, to investigate unanswered questions, but there's nothing there about what those questions are. This is something that deserves a fulsome debate, regular order. If your questions are what happened to some of the evidence, well, maybe we have some questions about why people were pardoned after they were convicted of abusing the police. So there's a lot that we could talk about. There might even be agreement about some of the issues, but to just launch a commission to reinvestigate something with no parameters, I think if you take this resolution and compare it to the original one, you'll see there was quite a bit of direction given to the committee, which was a bipartisan committee, although you seek to disavow the Republicans who participated. I think this is something that deserves a lot more than sneaking a commission through in the middle of the night again, so that
We wouldn't be here in the middle of the night if we hadn't had so much irrelevant conversations. We'd have been over a long time ago.
So at
Okay,
any rate,
I'm-
if you
listen,
want the commission,
I'm
I think
gonna
it
turn
needs-
the clock on. We're gonna turn the clock on because this is going way too long. People are abusing the situation, okay? We're abusing it. So turn the clocks on, please. We're gonna keep track of who's saying what, and we're gonna get over this meeting fairly quickly. Ms. Scanlon?
I don't know that there's any clocks part of the rules. It certainly hasn't been the practice in the 6 or 7 years
Yep.
I've been on the committee, but I had finished my remarks, so I'll
Thank you
yield
very
back.
much. I'm assuming there's no one else who wishes to speak on this amendment.
I'd like,
Mr. Neguse?
I thank the chairwoman. First, just three points. One, Mr. Griffith, when I said quote unquote unanswered questions, there's a reason I said quote unquote. It's because it's from the resolutions. It's not my phrase. That's the language that this resolution uses. Second, I suspect, I know you've been in Congress for some time, and I suspect that if I looked at your voting record, that I would not find any instance in which you voted for a rule that the Democratic majority put on the floor. That's a safe assumption, right? Fair enough? Oh, you voted for Democratic rules? I'll look forward. I'll go back and I'll check. I don't think so either. I would also say in that same period of time that you have, I am sure, because I know that you are a very passionate legislator, introduced countless amendments to a variety of different bills. So you never introduced an amendment during the time in which Democrats had a majority? That's your...
If the gentleman would yield?
Sure. I'd be happy.
I don't believe I've ever introduced an amendment to a rule, and I make it a strict policy in my office that if I propose an amendment and that amendment is adopted, I vote for the bill. Particularly coming to mind is the NDAA, where I consistently put in an amendment. When the amendment is approved, I vote for the bill. When the amendment is not approved, I don't vote for the bill.
I will just say, Mr. Griffith, this is the first time you've served on the Rules Committee, which is why you haven't had an opportunity to make amendments to the rule in the past. So I would just simply say this. Let's take you out of it. It is an intellectually dishonest argument, in my view, to suggest, and I'm not perhaps saying this because I know you were citing Jefferson, but to Ms. Houchin's suggestion, that essentially, if you make an amendment to the rule, if you're unwilling to vote for the rule, you should not be permitted to make amendments. That's essentially what that argument boils down to. That is the logical extension of that. So I look forward, when Democrats have a majority on this committee, every single time one of my colleagues makes an amendment, every single time Ms. Houchin makes an amendment to the rule, our reflexive retort will be, you have no business making an amendment to this rule because you don't intend to vote for the bill. That's ludicrous. Let's have a debate on the merits of the amendment that was made by Mr. McGovern. I would not make that argument to Mr. Roy, to Ms. Houchin, to any of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. Insofar as you wish to make an amendment to the rule, you have the ability to do so, and the fact that you were very unlikely to vote for a rule proposed by the majority party is not, in my view, a bar to having an honest debate about that particular amendment. So I just think that that's, in my view, a baseline understanding that we should be able to agree to. Lastly, I would just say, because I posed this question to you, Mr. Griffith, about the impetus behind the delay for this select committee, because it's lost on me. I don't understand why it's September and we now find ourselves voting on this new select subcommittee on January 6th. A quick Google search answered my question. So I'll just ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record. This is an article from March 13th of 2025. The headline, Speaker Mike Johnson and Republicans are at odds over January 6th investigation. Now, this was news to me. I'll just read a bit of it. Republicans, quote, are at a standstill over their investigation relitigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol, with House Speaker Mike Johnson and the Republicans leading the effort disagreeing on how to move forward. Johnson wants Republicans to stop investigating the former January 6 committee, including former GOP Representative Liz Cheney, and narrow its focus, according to three sources familiar with the negotiations. But GOP Representative Barry Loudermilk, I presume now is going to chair this select committee, so he apparently won this argument. He has been tapped to helm the probe, and he would prefer a broader mandate, a position backed by some officials at the White House. President Donald Trump told Johnson before he took office that he wanted the investigation to be a priority, end quote. So we have our answer. Apparently, the administration, Donald Trump, won out on this argument, compelled the Speaker to finally do what he apparently had promised to do 9 months ago, which is to create the select committee. That's why we're doing it now and deeming it very quietly in a rule with no fanfare, lest the public find out, because clearly the Speaker did not want this to be a priority. And I suspect we're going to hear a very similar explanation regarding his declination of putting up the plaque, but I'll certainly report back to this committee what we find. And I'll yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Nick.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Roy.
I know the chairwoman would like us to be able to get the rule voted out and get on with our evenings. I do think my friend from Virginia, though, deserves a full elucidation of, I think, the position from which he comes, which is coming at it from my vantage point. He said historian. I know the gentleman well. He's a dear friend. He's coming at it from the perspective of, in my view, like we were talking about earlier, pursue the truth wherever it may lead. I guess, for me, as someone who voted for the electors, as someone who had issues with the way everything unfolded and was very public in his pronouncement of those issues, I will tell you I have serious issues with what happened to some of my fellow Texans at the hands of supposedly objective jurists and prosecutors that put good people that I know in Texas in jail for simply being present near the Capitol. I know that there are a lot of facts that have been put forward that I don't believe, because I believe it was a politically motivated effort. And what the gentleman from Virginia is simply saying is that we should have a committee to go figure it all out on the Judiciary Committee, with lawyers, with the full power of subpoena. And we should know the truth. We should know the truth. In whatever direction it goes, we should know the truth. I believe that and have full-throatedly said it. But what I'm not going to do is listen to a dismissal of my friend's concerns as somehow not being appropriate, because he's laying out what I think is perfectly appropriate, which is that we have a committee to look into this. Now, January, February, March disagreements, well, hell's bells, there's disagreements. Well, at least we're having a friggin' debate on our side. But whatever disagreements there are is being put forward now with a solution, which is a subcommittee on the Judiciary Committee to look into the facts and pursue the truth. What the hell are we afraid of? What are we afraid of finding out? If there's something that they're going to put forward that you disagree with, highlight it. But at least there'll be investigators and staff and members that can go look at a politically charged effort, which was by definition one-sided, and then go look at the record and decide whether that record reflects the truth. I support my friend from Virginia, and I yield back.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I promise I'll be brief. I'm ready to move on with this, but I would just ask that we remember that when this was set up, Pelosi had 8 appointments, McCarthy had 5, if you recall. Am I correct?
Correct.
McCarthy picked Jim Banks, Jim Jordan, Rodney Davis, Kelly Armstrong, Troy Nels, according to my records. And then Pelosi rejected
Correct.
the minority appointments. And she then selected both the chair and the vice chair, and she selected the Republicans that served on the committee, not the minority leader. And had she not done that, we would not be having this discussion right now, because then both sides would have been represented, and you could have had an objective discussion. But it was Pelosi's rejection of the Republican members of the committee, and then her insistence on selecting the Republicans who could serve and picking the chair and the vice chair is the reason we're even having this discussion.
Would the gentleman yield? That also included the current chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan, correct?
That is correct.
I yield back.
I yield.
Thank you. Is there
Madam
any
Chair.
further debate on the amendment?
Madam Chair, so all of us on this side of the aisle were here. It was my 3rd day in office, January 6th. And it demanded to be investigated. And there were attempts to make sure that there would be a bipartisan commission that stood outside, and Republicans voted that down. But the other thing that happened, and I think that this is why Representative Scanlon's motion is important. If the public would look at this, they don't know Section 9, House Resolution 605 is hereby adopted. There was no presentation of this before the Rules Committee. We did not hear from the chair and the ranking member, so we could not have a debate and ask questions. The American people could not see what was happening. It was just hereby adopted. 605. How do the American people know what Resolution 605 is? So that's why we are raising these issues, because it has been just thrust upon them. And if we hadn't brought this, if Chair McGovern hadn't started with his amendment, if Representative Scanlon had not had hers, there would have been no debate whatsoever. And I think that that is an important thing. And as to the issue of, if this is passed, will you vote for the bill? There are always amendments to the bills that we consider, and in fact, I know that before I had the privilege and honor and benefit of sitting on the Rules Committee, when Democrats headed it up, there were many Republican amendments to Democrat bills. We didn't demand that if you were a Republican and your amendment was passed, and many of those Republican amendments were passed, and many of these Democratic amendments to the appropriations bill will get passed, there is not a requirement that if your amendment is adopted on a piece of law that you must vote for the bill. That's never been a requirement, right? It's just not how it works. It's just not how it works. And so to demand that does not make sense, and it's not consistent to how this legislative process works. And given that it is Representative Scanlon's amendment, I'm going to defer some time to her.
I just keep coming back to the fact that we have this bare bones resolution, which is being launched without hearing, without explanation, with no direction as to what these unanswered questions are. And that's not good legislative process. We have Mr. Griffith, who thinks that the questions have to do with missing evidence. We have Mr. Roy, who thinks it has to do with whether or not Texans were unjustly convicted. I mean, I think there's some fleshing out that needs to be done if this is to have any kind of legitimacy and be anything other than a fishing expedition for retribution. So that's the basis of why I've offered the motion, and I'd urge everyone to support it. I yield back to Ms. Ledger-Fernandez.
And I yield back to the chairwoman.
Hearing no further discussion, the question is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have
a
it.
recorded
The amendment is not agreed to.
I'd request a recorded vote. Roll call.
Ms. Scanlon requests a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Mrs. Fishbach? No. Mrs. Fishbach, no.